If you love handheld gaming, you probably spend your time on Switch. But when it comes to powerful handheld, I might think of maybe Steam Deck instead. But what if I need more power than a Steam Deck? Well, it's time to introduce you ROG Ally. We got our hands on this gaming handheld PC for quite a long time, so I'm here to do some tests and answer a lot of questions about this unique device. What's the performance of its AMD chip looks like, and how about the power consumption, how about the battery life, and what's my honest thought on this little piece of rig here. But before we dive into that, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Brilliant, who have kindly sponsored today's video. If you ever wonder about the technologies behind a device like ROG Ally, such as how the CPU works or what is GPU rendering all about, then Brilliant's interactive courses are excellent resources. Brilliant offers classes in algorithms, cryptography, machine learning, and many more fascinating subjects. It's a great way not to just passively read about tech, but to really understand it through active hands-on learning. And the best part is you can try it all for free for a full 30 days using our link brilliant.org/geeker1. And the first 200 people use our link will get a 20% of their annual premium subscription, so don't hesitate to check it out. When it comes to handheld gaming, size and weights are the name of the game. And this Ally might just be the smallest PC that ROG has ever rolled out. It's got a 7-inch screen and weighs at 608 grams. That's 60 grams lighter than the Steam Deck. Obviously, over 600 grams is still pretty hard to swallow for a handheld device, but thanks to its ergonomic grip shape, it actually feels quite comfortable to hold. While the ROG Ally does share some similarity with the Steam Deck in terms of its structure, the button layout really sets it apart. It follows the Xbox controller blueprint with the joystick positioned on the upper left side. Now that's a matter of personal preference, but the joystick does feel much reachable here comparing to Steam Deck. Sadly, we don't have that amazing trackpad from Steam Deck, but the ABXY keys have a longer travel and a stronger rebound, providing a noticeable difference in tactile feedback. The D-pad and LR buttons don't disappoint either, providing crisp, responsive feedbacks, while the triggers powered by Hall sensors offers a satisfying long travel. As for the joysticks itself, I would say it's quite normal. We don't get Hall sensors here, but what it does have is RGB, because let's face it, it won't be ROG without a little light show, right? The 7-inch screen is another highlight. It's a 1080p 120Hz LCD panel with a quick response time. Whether you can take full advantage of that 120Hz panel is debatable, but you get the option to try it, right? The screen delivers good color performance and boasts a peak brightness over 520 nits. Great news for a device you may use outdoors. On either side of the screen, you will find 4 function buttons. The top 2 are migrated from an Xbox controller, and the one on the lower right side opens the Armory Crate, the ASUS software. And if you hold it longer, it will bring out a layout guide. The left one opens a quick menu, and you can turn a lot of things on the flight when playing games. And well, you can even turn on RSR here, which is AMD's FSR at the driver's level. This menu really packs a punch with its functionality. And then hold this button and it will act like a Control, Alt, and Delete command. Because, well, it runs Windows, so Task Manager is going to be your best friend as always. Speaking of shortcuts, there is one that really caught my eye, and it's the BIOS. Just hold the volume down button during a boot up and you are in the BIOS. But here's the kicker. The BIOS can be fully operated using the controller buttons. They've even adapted UI icons for the controller. Want to tweak anything in the BIOS? You won't need to plug in a keyboard or mouse. You can just handle everything directly from the controller. Now that's definitely some sweet tweakers detail. When it comes to ports, ROG Ally provides a 3.5mm headphone jack, a micro SD card slot, and a port for external GPU, along with a single USB-C. Honestly, as a Windows device, the port selection is a bit sparse. It would be great if they include an extra USB-C or maybe even Type-A, let's say. The included power brick is a 65-watt one, and you can definitely use your own PD adapter. It won't really affect your gaming performance as we tested. Alright, enough crap about the hands-on part. We need to go deeper, right? It's time to crack this thing open and reveal the secret inside. I would say this is neatly organized. And the color, well, it's just pure ROG, huh? Right at the bottom, there's the 40 watt-hour battery. Honestly though, a 40 watt-hour battery isn't massive, and there seems to be a tad bit of unused space in the middle here. They could have packed a few more cells in my opinion. And after removing the battery, we spot two large speakers underneath, which is definitely important for the handheld device. And take a look at the cooling solution here. A dual-fan single heat pipe system, a rather luxurious setup for a 7-inch handheld. Yeah, we've seen this kind of stuff in much larger MacBooks. And here at the center of the stage is the brain and the heart of this amazing handheld, an AMD Z1 Extreme processor. If you just heard the name, it feels like a custom chip, right? Well, not exactly. The Z1 Extreme is essentially a gaming-centric edition of the 7840U, with a slightly different voltage curve and the AI units disabled. The CPU here is using the latest Zen 4 architecture, 8-core, 16 threads, boosts up to 5.1 GHz. Zen 4 made by 4nm process? This sounds like a recipe for power efficiency. But what truly has my attention is the integrated graphics. The Z1 Extreme boasts a 12CU integrated GPU based on the latest RDNA 3 architecture. Thanks to the TSMC process, it can boost up to 2.7 GHz. As for the power consumption, ROG Ally offers 3 presets: Quiet, Performance, and Turbo, which correspond to 9 watt, 15 watt, and 25 watt of the processor power. And when you plug in, the turbo mode can actually exceed 30 watt. It can even temporarily peak to a brief 53 watt and settle back to around maybe 40 watt, then gradually easing to a steady 30 watt after several minutes. We stress tested this Ally for 30 straight minutes, and impressively, the system managed to retain a stable 30 watt power draw, with temperature peaking just above 80 degrees Celsius. Considering its form factor, this is some decent cooling efficiency. Another very important thing we care about is the battery life. And unfortunately, there is some bad news about its battery life. In the quiet mode, with the processor consuming about 9 watts, the device's overall power draw hovers around 14 watts. Non-stop gaming with that, you got yourself a sub 3 hour of playtime? Barely a second, I would say. And when you switch over to performance mode, the battery life drops to around 1 hour and 40 minutes, and the turbo mode only lasts about 1 hour, which is just not enough for anything. I mean, I can't even figure out the boss fight in Elden Ring that 1 hour. So unless you have unlimited power around you, this battery life issue can be really annoying. And before we solved that, we just couldn't get the mobility of the typical handhelds like Switch or PSV. But do you know what it does much better than Switch? Performance! You know, we sacrificed the battery life for something, so it better pay off. And you know what? This little AMD chip won't let you down on that. On the CPU side, the Z1 Extreme is 16% faster on single core than 6900HS, while it slightly lags behind Intel's 13th gen cores. And when it comes to multi-core performance, this Z1 Extreme absolutely kills it, outperforming both 6900HS and i7 3700H, with less power draw. I mean, these two are sub-high-end laptop chips, and this handheld CPU really is something, huh? However, this is not even the best news we got. Let's limit its power and see how it goes in terms of efficiency. And to my surprise, at each power level, this Z1 Extreme constantly delivering around 18 to 21% better performance than the 6900HS. And comparing to Intel, the advantage is even bigger. Besides that, the SoC or CPU on-core power consumption is also very low on Z1 Extreme, often draws only 1 watt on idle. For comparison, the 6900HS on my ROG Flow 13 takes over 1.4 watts of SoC power consumption, and the Intel platform can easily go over 3 watts, so it's definitely more optimized for efficiency than those regular PC chips. However, as a gaming handheld, there is still one important thing that we can't ignore, which is GPU. We put the new RDNA 3 integrated graphics of the Z1 Extreme to the test using 3D Mark TimeSpy benchmarks. While the result seems okay, I would say, it's already matching a GTX Titan on graphic performance, which is not too shabby for iGPU. But on the other hand, it's not hugely improved upon previous gen. Nor does it matches modern GPUs like the 2050. Well, maybe that's asking too much. The good thing is, we got that sweet power efficiency bump for the GPU too. At the package power of 40 watt, the performance of Z1 Extreme is 9% better than the last gen, but when we limit it to 20 watt, the gap goes up to 22%, and at 15 watt, it leads by a remarkable 35%. This GPU is something when you lower down the power numbers. Unfortunately, down to 11 watt, it will receive a huge punch and drops pretty significantly. So we know the sweet spot is about 15 watt on this thing. And in case you want to compare Z1 Extreme's graphic power to some of the most popular phones and tablet chips, we ran the 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme to find out. With its full potential, Z1 Extreme is comparable to Apple's M1, and when limited to 15 watt, it slightly outperforms Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. And it's about 6 times faster than Nintendo Switch. Not bad, huh? But anyway, let's just play some games and see how this thing really performs. Here, we are mainly focused on two scenarios. One is plug-in with a 30 watt to 40 watt chip, and the other is on battery with a chip limited to 15 watts, which is quite common for handheld. First up, Red Dead Redemption 2. This is a typical AAA title that seems quite challenging for integrated GPUs. Luckily, we got FSR 2.0 to help us drop the burden. With the performance FSR, we can run the game pretty smoothly at 1080p when plugged in. It runs close to 60 FPS. Quite impressive, right? I would say this is already a smoother experience than PS4 and Xbox One. But for the handheld, it would be unfair to just stick to the wall and never try the battery, right? Thankfully, when we cut power and limited chip to 15 watt, the game still managed to run at a playable level at about 40 to nearly 50 FPS. Great! Since the low power performance seems pretty nice and solid, I came up with this idea of maybe we should take it to 9 watts and see what happens. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. Under 9 watts of processor power, the game just drops massively, and it only left us with a sub 20-ish FPS, which is quite unacceptable. The problem is, Z1 Extreme is still a massive PC chip. You got 8 cores to feed, and 9 watt is just not enough to drive both massive CPU and that beefy GPU. As you can see, the CPU can only run about 800 to 900 MHz, which is impossible to assure a decent gaming experience. I think what we lack here are some core control options from ROG's side. A 4-core CPU would definitely be better at such a low power stage. I just hope they can provide that option in a BIOS update. Next, we tried a more challenging game, Cyberpunk 2077. Same 1080p with FSR, but this time we tried the Ultra Performance mode since the game is way too demanding for the handheld like this. And to my surprise, it seems just fine. Under 30 watt of power, it runs at 50-ish FPS, even when we are in a driving thing when the graphics were quite demanding. And when we limit it to 15 watt, the frame rate drops quite a bit, averaging around 30 to 40 FPS. At this point, the power distribution issue between CPU and iGPU is getting more and more significant. If CPU starts claiming more power, it will no doubt leave less for the GPU. But hey, this is Cyberpunk on a handheld. 30-ish FPS is still quite impressive, I would say. And next, we tried out Resident Evil 4 Remake. This game could reach 70 to 80 FPS or even higher in indoor scenes when running at 30 watts. You can even utilize that 120Hz display with that kind of performance. Even at 15 watts, indoor scenes are still maintaining a smooth 60 FPS. However, outdoor things are quite different, with performance dropping to around 50 FPS at 30 watts and around 40 FPS at 15 watts. And this is another game where 9 watts stands for unplayable. It's never gonna work for this monster AMD chip if you don't have at least some power. Elden Ring is another title that really shines on ROG Ally. On the Steam Deck though, it struggled and managed only at 30-ish FPS on low setting. However, it is significantly improved on ROG Ally. At 720p low setting, even in demanding scenes, the game runs above 50 FPS with full power, and remarkably, even at 15 watt, we still hovers above 40 FPS. Although it's not the smoothest gaming experience, it's certainly playable. I definitely hope Elden Ring can endorse some kind of upscaling method like AMD's FSR2, which can really make low-res games much better. I also tried Genshin Impact on this machine, and as you can see, we end up with around 70 to 80-ish FPS in demanding areas under 1080p mid preset with 0.6 times rendering with FSR. Even with a 15-watt processor, we're still getting 60 FPS, which is obviously a great result. I also tried some emulators, and to my surprise, this little machine runs PS3 games really well. I remember running Uncharted 2 on Steam Deck, and it only achieves single-digit frame rates, but this Ally here managed to run at a whopping 40 FPS, even smoother than the PS3 console itself. And you know what? The frame rate is actually benefited from a feature that you might not expected, which is AVX 512. While often considered useless, AVX 512 is indeed supported by RPCS3, helping to boost gaming performance. And despite being a small handheld chip, Z1 Extreme does support AVX 512 thanks to its Zen 4 architecture. Adding this to its 8-core CPU design, you got yourself a smooth PS3 experience. Unfortunately, this is not sustainable under 15 watts because emulators like RPCS3 relies heavily on CPUs, which is super power sensitive, and the 15 watt just can't do that. Apart from PS3, I also tried Breath of the Wild on CMU, and we can even reach a solid 60 FPS at full power. And when we move down to 15 watt, the game still maintains a decent 50-ish frame rate, providing a pretty smooth gaming experience overall. This is again smoother than an actual Wii U or Switch. If you think this kind of performance is not enough, ROG also provides an option for external graphics. You can definitely plug in with a 4090 laptop GPU if you got a deep pocket. That will provide you about 7 times the performance of the integrated GPUs, even enough for 4K gaming. I know it's kind of a minority thing, you know, the GPU costs maybe more than twice as the ROG Ally itself, but hey, you got an option, right? Well, what do I think about this ROG Ally? It's amazing in terms of its performance, playing AAA title at 60 frames per second under 1080p and running the most demanding emulators smoothly. I just couldn't imagine that on previous handhelds. But I think for daily usage, you just couldn't ignore the battery life issue. Even after heavy tweaking, lowering down everything, I can only manage to get a maximum of 4.5 hours of battery life in a 2D visual novel, which is quite frustrating. And if you want to play demanding 3D titles, you just couldn't run them under 9-watt power-saving mode. So realistically, you only got 1.5 hours before your favorite AAA title runs out of juice. I think the problem is, it's just not that easy to slim down a PC. A well-designed typical handheld can be simplified at every aspect to reduce power consumption. For example, when playing demanding 3D games, Switch OLED consumes less than 5 watts for the whole device in handheld mode. And PS Vita even consumes less than that. A handheld based on PC can never get close to that kind of wattage number because PC got so many peripherals. You got a bunch of IOs to maintain even when you're not using them. You also got a removable SSD which consumes a lot more power than you think. You also got a motherboard enhanced for power management just to support your CPU boost to up to 50 watts. Even when you're not using 50 watts, these ICs are still there. And upon that, you got this complicated fat-ass Windows OS that will never gonna help with your battery life. So it is very hard for a PC handheld to nail it. But still, kudos to every challenger trying to bring up new stuff. We do need a lot of innovation to push the industry forward. And ROG certainly have a pretty good basis to build on. So what's your opinion on this ROG Ally? Please let me know in the comment section below, and if you like our video, please like and subscribe to the channel and share the video. This is Fei from GeekerOne. Catch you guys next time.